On this week's show, political parties who don't know what an EV sounds like, falling short on hydrogen targets, and that homophonic name that's here to stay. These stories and more coming up next on 10. Enjoying today's show on YouTube? Want to read the articles we're referencing to as we go? You'll be pleased to know that we've embedded clickable links through to each and every story in today's show. Just click on the headline for each story in your favourite browser and it will take you right to our site where you can read the story in full. Watching elsewhere? You'll find the links to each story in our show notes for today's show at www.transportevolved.com. It's Friday, April the 17th, 2015. I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield and according to the police, I'm officially not a criminal. I have a certificate to prove it. As anyone who has ever done a small bit of computer programming will tell you, making a change in a code base invariably causes some unintended consequences that can range from not being able to click next on a web page to crashing an entire system. Well, this week, Fiat Chrysler issued a recall notice for 2012 to 2015 model year Fiat 500e electric cars after a software glitch, which was triggered by a year-old fix to another problem that Fiat rolled out last March, caused some Fiat 500es to suddenly go into an emergency shutdown mode. It's a classic case of one part of the car's computer system implementing a new piece of code that another part didn't even know existed, causing the car's onboard system to shut down all motive power rather than enter limp home mode when the battery pack got a little low on juice. Needless to say, the fix has now been issued and owners of affected cars, about 5,600 in total, will be contacted for the appropriate complementary fix to their cars. Just remember, QA is there for a reason, people. It's official. The 2017 Chevrolet Bolt, which GM committed to making earlier this year after a surprise unveiling in Detroit, will keep the name it was given as a concept car, despite that name being almost indistinguishable to the Chevrolet Volt range extended EV when spoken out loud. The news comes courtesy of GM's marketing chief Tom Mahoney, who told USA Today this week that the name wouldn't be changed before the car enters into production next year. Saying that there are synergies between the Volt and Bolt homophones, Mahoney said that any potential confusion between the two names could be a marketing advantage for the firm, partly because the Chevrolet Volt, that's with a V, is now a well-known vehicle. With a price tag of around $30,000, the Chevrolet Bolt EV is expected to enter into production late next year and will take up the position as Chevy's 100% electric car shortly after replacing the outgoing, limited-range Chevy Spark EV, which will end production next year. In my time as an automotive journalist, I've been able to do some pretty cool things. I've been to the Arctic, I've been to Israel, and I've even been to both Tesla and Nissan EV factories. But this week I've got to admit to being just a little jealous of Autocar's Jeremy Taylor, who just got back to the UK after driving a Formula E race car in Miami, Florida. While he wasn't allowed on the Formula E racetrack, Taylor thoroughly enjoyed his time behind the wheel on a local speedway track and described the experience as exhilarating and very physical. It's tough keeping my head still because of the wind buffeting my helmet. The cockpit has all the comforts of a medieval chamber and I'm developing Popeye's forearms in trying to hit the apex of every curve, he wrote of his experience, before loudly proclaiming that he would of course do it all over again if he could. No. My turn now, perhaps? With literally billions of yen invested in the hydrogen fuel cell revolution, the Japanese government is doing everything it can to encourage the mass market adoption of hydrogen fuel cell electric cars. But this week, the Japanese government came to the realisation that it would miss its own goal of having 100 hydrogen fueling stations online and operational by March 2016. That's after the final round of applications approved by the administration as part of a 3-year, 21.38 billion yen investment into hydrogen fueling stations resulted in 32 stations approved, bringing it shy of the 100 stations that it hoped to commission. At an estimated cost of $5 million per site, hydrogen filling stations are still really costly to build, with only half of the money available as a grant from the Japanese government. But unless more stations are built soon, Japan's hydrogen fuel cell revolution may happen slower than it, and automakers like Honda and Toyota would like. Staying Sticking with refuelling infrastructure for a second, Nissan CEO Carlos Ghosn went on the record this week to say that he believes Nissan North America could easily top 50,000 annual LEAF sales in the coming years, provided national and local governments step up to the plate. Talking to Automotive News this week, the EV-loving CEO said that real barrier to EV mass adoption isn't range but charging infrastructure. Build more charging infrastructure, he said, and sales will continue to rise. Ultimately, it's decisions made by government and execution made by the states, the cities and the communities, he said, of his call for more governmental support for plug-in cars. We're going to have to be patient. With year-to-date sales of the LEAF slightly down on this time last year, caused in part, we think, by bad weather and the expected refresh to the LEAF in around a year's time, it's unlikely that Nissan will hit the 50,000 LEAF sales target this year. But given past performance, we're also hopeful that the 50,000 car target isn't that far away for this Japanese automaker. When GM unveiled the all-new second-generation Chevy Spark minicar back in New York at the start of this month, it showed off a car which was more refined, had better fuel efficiency and more toys than the outgoing model. But it also marked the end of the Spark EV, the limited-range all-electric EV that Chevy has been making to tide it over until the arrival of the aforementioned 200-mile all-electric Chevy Bolt EV next year. Until that happens, the outgoing Spark EV will be continued to sold. But this week, GM announced a welcome price cut for anyone who doesn't mind buying a car that's on the automotive cutting block. A $1,650 reduction on the entry-level Spark EV 1 LT. That's not all. After federal and state incentives in the 3 states where the Spark is sold, California, Maryland and Oregon, have been accounted for, GM is offering cash-on-hood deals to bring effective pricing as low as $15,000, making the Spark EV one of the cheapest electric cars you can buy today. So, if you happen to live in one of those 3 states and you want a deal, now's your chance. With the Audi Q7 e-tron Quattro TDI due to launch later this year, and the just unveiled Audi Q7 e-tron TFSI due to follow it in China early next, all eyes are currently focused on Audi's first full-size plug-in hybrid SUV. And this week, Audi's technology chief Dr. Ulrich Hackenberg let slip the news that when it launches in Europe later this year, the Q7 e-tron Quattro will be offered with inductive charging as an optional extra. Unlike conductive charging, the posh way of saying plugging a car in, inductive charging works by fitting a small receiver plate to the underside of an electric car and inducing an electric current in it by placing it near to a source of electromagnetic radiation, or in this case, another plate through which current is passed to induce that electromagnetic field. Hackenberg says he thinks inductive charging is a must-have for EVs and plug-in hybrids in the future to make the mass market. But with conductive charging still a headache for most people, we have to admit that, well, we'd like that to be fixed before we go on to any exotic ways of charging our cars up. What do you think? And finally, for those who don't know, there's a national election going on in the UK right now to try and decide who will represent the people in the next parliament. And with election day less than 3 weeks away, things are hotting up on this side of the pond. And that means plenty of party political broadcasts and announcements, with each political party trying hard to outsmart the competition and make them look like idiots. Well, this week the Liberal Democrats, a kind of a middle-of-the-road party who have been in coalition with a Conservative party, broadcast a 2-minute 40-second commercial in which a BMW i3 featured. For a party which says it wants to only allow ultra-low emission vehicles from 2040 and pledges massive investment in electric car charging infrastructure, that's hardly surprising, except the ad, which actually had nothing to do with cars, featured a BMW i3 making the kind of noises you'd normally hear a traditional car make, including the noise of a starter motor turning over when the actress on camera pressed the start button. What is it they say about politicians and being trusted? Whoops. Well, I know what an i3 sounds like, but I'm still trying to figure out the sound of a tree falling in the forest with no one to hear. You can catch us next week at the same time for another weekly news roundup, or visit our news site every day at www.transportevolve.com for the latest news. You'll notice that we've had no live panel talk show for a few weeks now. That's because we're shifting things around a bit at the Transport Evolved offices, plus health problems in the family, so bear with us and we'll let you know when that show is back on the air. As usual, there's been a whole lot we haven't managed to fit into today's show, including footage of a Tesla Model S P85D going flat out on the German Autobahn, Niro, one of 2 Transport Evolved staff Nissan LEAFs, loses a second capacity bar, a new study which suggests electric car battery prices are at a tipping point, and the Cadillac ELR gets a power upgrade and a price drop for 2016. So when we're done, click this link and head to our site to catch up. I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield. That's all there is to say. Have a great weekend, and until next time, keep evolving.